What is going on, New York Giant fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast. Hope you guys are doing well. Hit the like button, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or a video drops. Appreciate you coming back. Share this out. Do all the good stuff. Share it on podcast platforms. Make sure to download this podcast. Tell your friends to tell your friend. Whatever. I don't know. The New York Giants got another game this week. And, of course, we'll be doing the usual breakdown. And in the second half of our show, we do have Mookie Alexander of Field Goals coming on, which is an SB Nation site that covers the Seattle Seahawks. We've had him on 3 times already. In the period of time that I've been having some content creators or writers from the opposition on, it's always fun with Mookie chopping it up and stuff like that. But the New York Giants... This is going to be a tough game, and I have to try is the key word here, try to keep it objective because I have my fan thoughts, but I have to keep it really in the middle for you guys as the content viewer because I do have people who still think the season's good, people who think the season is done, goodbye, season over. The New York Giants are facing a good team. I don't really care about, they didn't play anybody. Well, the Giants are 1-3, right? They've played the Pats. They've played the Broncos. They've played the Miami Dolphins without Tua Tagovailoa. I would still argue that this is a good team and that they're playing a little higher than expectations, considering that they have a new coaching staff, new OC, new DC, couple new pieces, but the Giants are coming in heavily underdog, not just the Seahawks, losing last week to Detroit. They want to have a get-right game. They want to be in the right position before facing San Francisco on Thursday Night Football, not to mention you have the 12th man. So it's going to be interesting. And as we get into the injury report, right, Adoree Jackson, he's questionable with the calf injury, and so is Andrew Phillips. Devin Singletary is doubtful. Malik Neighbors is out with a concussion. Matt Adams is questionable. So you have arguably your top 2 offensive pieces out. Now, I don't think in retrospect that this game would change anyone's thoughts unless you're like a positive Daniel Jones fan. If he has a good game or a bad game, I don't think this is some needle mover. Not to say that this defense for Seattle is piss poor or, try to move the goalposts, but if Daniel Jones wasn't in the position that he was, if this team wasn't 1-3, or Daniel Jones didn't have a bad year last year, if there wasn't too much context in the negative connotation concerning it, you would have a better feeling about Daniel Jones if you came out of this game with a win, because he's without Malik Neighbors, he's without Devin Singletary, so his top weapons are very similar to what we saw in 22, and even 23, but I'm saying 22 because we went over there in 22. Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Daniel Bellinger, though I want to say Bellinger got hurt before the Seahawks game, and they put in some other tight ends with Cager and stuff like that. But anyway, before I get to the Seahawks injury report, which we'll talk about, the motto of the game for Daniel Jones is just he's got to find other targets. He doesn't have a running game as of right now. And even if he had Singletary, he doesn't have a running game. The Giants have not been able to run the football for a multitude of reasons. But he's got to find some other weapons. And that has to slide into whenever they get Neighbors back. Because Neighbors can't sit here and have 212 targets. That can't happen, right? If you guys haven't already watched my video on Daniel Jones, I put my thoughts in there that I kind of do want him benched. Not even kind of. I really don't want to see him on the field because I feel like he's holding this offense back. But in-game prep, without even talking about that, hopefully, if he has a solid game, he could slide some of that cohesion that he has with Jalen Hyatt and Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton over equally into the Malik Neighbors effect, to where he's not targeting guys 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 times a game and just leaving some guys on the back burner. Now for the Seattle Injury report, Julian Love and Boye Mafe are questionable. Mafe, knee injury. Love, thigh injury. He left last week's game. Byron Murphy, the rookie, hamstring injury. He is out. And nose tackle Cameron Young, he is out with a knee injury. So, going into the team rankings, the Giants ranked 21st in total yards per game, 15th in passing offense, 30th in rushing offense, and 30th in points. Defensively, they rank in the teens, so pretty good if we're considering all things, right? The first few weeks, they played some tough opponents. When you look at it in retrospect and, from a glass lens, Darnold and a good offense. And I'm not trying to make excuses because I know where this defense should be, all these other things with the pieces. But you play Darnold, you play Daniels, who are two good quarterbacks as of right now. Deshaun Watson's not a good quarterback, and Dak Prescott didn't totally ruin your day last Thursday night. So they're 12th in total yards, 14th against the pass, 15th against the run, and 13th in points per game. We'll talk about the run in a little bit when it comes to the game plan and things to look for. 9th in pass percentage, 24th in run percentage, 29th in run percentage, pass percentage on first down, and 25th in run percentage on first down. They are 6th in the NFL in blitz percentage. They are 3rd in sacks, which was kind of hijacked because of the Browns game and the Washington game. And then 18th in pressure percentage. Seahawks, 5th in total yards, first best passing offense. The Giants, for the second week in a row, are facing, as of right now, the first best passing offense. Now, these are rankings that I put in pre-Thursday Night Football. Yes, I know that Baker Mayfield had a good game and Kirk Cousins threw over 500 yards. But, of course, we have to see what Seattle does. So I'm not even going to take Thursday Night Football into account. I'm going to do Week 4 rankings, weeks 1 to 4, whatever. Okay. So, first best passing offense, again, the Giants for the second straight week, they're going to be facing the first best passing offense in the NFL. 21st in the running game and 10th in points per game. Defensively, they're a pretty good unit. This is a unit that hasn't been great over the last few years. It's been like flip-floppy, right? Pete Carroll led teams. Their defense hasn't been spectacular. It's been mid at best, probably in the 20s. 8th in, there's a gnat around me. 8th in total yards, 7th against the pass, 14th against the run, and 5th in points per game. 3rd in the pass percentage, 30th in run percentage, 11th in pass percentage on first down, and 28th in run percentage on first down. They are 15th in blitz percentage. Now, something, and I'm going to spoil it, I always end up doing it. Mookie told us they do have a lot of more simulated pressures rather than just straight up four-man rushes, which has obviously helped with his defense. 15th blitz percentage, 1st in pressure percentage, so that's big. I remember the Cowboys were one of the top teams in pressure percentage coming into last week, and they're 5th in the NFL in sacks. So there's that. Now, things to look for, right? Let's start out with the Giants' offense. No Malik Neighbors and no Devin Singletary. So what is the Giants' identity? What do they have to do? What are some things to look for? Number one, I think you're going to see some Daniel Jones in the running game. The Giants are probably not going to get it done with a Dante Miller and Eric Gray or a Tyrone Tracy. I don't know if because they'll have to run it through a running back at some point. I don't know if they're going to run it straight up the gut. I don't know if they're going to run side to side in a zone type like last week, which really didn't work. But Daniel Jones is going to have to be a part of this running game. You're going to have him take off a few times, have an extension to that running game, because you don't have Singletary. And even then, I would say, okay, maybe Daniel Jones has to get some carries because the rushing offense necessarily hasn't been great for the Giants. It's been downright piss poor, let's be completely honest. Now, they will try to keep the defense on their toes with some deep shots, probably to Slayton or Jalen Hyatt. There is no excuse. I will say this right now. I don't know if it's on Daniel Jones, if it's on Jalen Hyatt, if it's on Brian Dable, Mike Rowe, Mike Kafka, whoever the fuck. There is no excuse for Jalen Hyatt to have something less than, I don't know, probably in the range of, he cannot have something like 20% of the offensive snaps. That can't happen. Malik Neighbors is physically not going to be on the field. Now, there are times, most of the time, that the Giants have run with heavy personnel, with Theo Johnson and Chris Manners, or Theo Johnson and Daniel Bellinger. There is a window because Malik Neighbors is not on the field for other guys to get open. For guys who have not been utilized, like I've been talking about, to be on the field and, hey, these guys get open, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Theo Johnson is one of those guys. But we're talking about Jalen Hyatt, who was a third-round pick last year, this deep shot guy. The Giants have not been giving him a fair shot. This is a game you'd like to see some of that. Maybe a catch or two. Explosive plays will work to the Giants' advantage this game because they don't have Malik Neighbors. So deep shots to test the defense. I anticipate a lot of short plays, probably a lot of slants. And the problem I have is that we faced the Seahawks 2 years ago with a similar game plan. Now, of course, Barkley was the head of our offense, a little bit of a different story personnel-wise this year, but a lot of short plays, a lot of stick concepts, slants, all that shit was figured out by the Seahawks. He meaning Pete Carroll and Clint Hurt, they set a blueprint to the rest of the league. They had the blueprint, they set it, and then they basically put it on film for the rest of the league. This is how you beat Daniel Jones and the New York Football Giants. And a lot of teams took that to light. They took that into their game plan, and the Giants ended up losing how many other games in the last few that Daniel Jones was bad overall. But short plays is not necessarily going to work every single time. Wan'Dale Robinson, he was on pace in the game for like 33 catches and 57 yards or some shit like that. That's not sustainable. That's like a yard and a something per catch. It cannot be so just dilapidated with these short plays and predicated on yards after catch. It's not going to work like that. This is not some Shanahan scheme. So the Giants really need to stop acting like they have a Shanahan scheme because they don't have a competent enough quarterback and their top wide receiver is not on the field. And let's just say that defenses really don't fear the Giants' offense. Lots of screens. I do anticipate the screen game. I think that you'll see probably two guys involved in the screen game. You'll see, I would say, Wan'Dale Robinson. He's an outside guy I'm going to pick to maybe have a wide receiver screen or two. But if we're talking about setup screen, 10-yard play downfield as an extension of the running game, I would say Tyrone Tracy and Theo Johnson, two guys from this year who were expected to do some things, Theo more than Tyrone, and I do expect those two guys to get involved somehow. I would also like to have Theo Johnson on a seam, move in some way down the field. He's athletic. He's more of a pass-catching tight end than Daniel Bellinger is, and their weakness is the linebacking core with Tyrell Dodson, the former Buffalo Bill. You'll have Jerome Baker this week, and I'm probably blanking on another name in that linebacker room. So we got Jerome Baker, Tyrell Dodson, and Tyrese Knight, who is the rookie linebacker out of UTEP. So you have a couple of guys to pick on with that linebacking core. And if you want, now I'd probably think that they'd put a safety on him. Tyrone Tracy, use him in the receiving game. Have him in the slot. He used to be a wide receiver. He probably still thinks like a wide receiver a little bit. So as far as the defense goes, I would suspect that the Giants may blitz a little bit more than in past weeks. Maybe not to the level of the Browns game and not to the level of the Washington game, but somewhere in that happy middle, the happy medium, because this is an offensive line that has dealt with some injuries. They haven't really synced up yet, and I think Shane Bowen ought to attack that a little bit with the weakness being some of the guards. The tackle on the right side, he is the third-string tackle, Stone Forsythe. He's a guy he's not great, okay? He's not Charles Cross, who was having a really good year. So the Giants may do that, but they also may bend but don't break. There is no shot in hell, and it will happen because it's the Giants. There's no shot in hell you're going to try to win this game by playing small ball football. It's not going to happen. You don't have Devin Singletary this week. You could, but you kind of have to win this game through a shootout if Seattle's up to that. And if they're not, then obviously you change your game plan. But I would also anticipate Seattle picks on Deontay Banks. Now, Drew Phillips is coming back this week. Adoree Jackson will get his snaps in there. Cordell Fly had a decent week last week. Deontay Banks has been pretty bad the last 4 weeks. I would suspect that Geno Smith, in his quick passing game, is probably going to target Deontay Banks. And I don't expect a good result, unfortunately. That's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong, and I'll come back on here to say if I'm wrong, if I am indeed wrong. So players to watch. Geno Smith is having a really good year. Now, you look at the stats, right? 4 interceptions, 4 touchdowns. Oh, he's not really having a good year. Yeah, I think he is. When you look at the yards, he's at 1,182, 7.4 yards per throw, 295 yards per game. In a passing league right now that the quarterback play is down, he has 295 yards per game. I don't care who he played, that's on the table. 72.3 completion percentage, that is on the table, right? And he's not even doing it in a scheme that he's totally familiar with. Now he has input, but at the end of the day, Ryan Grubb is the offensive coordinator. He's coming in from the University of Washington. So, when push comes to shove, you have to give Geno Smith credit. Now, Kenneth Walker is back this week, as he was last week, and he had some really nice plays. Zach Charbonnet is also there as well, but the lead carrier is going to be Kenneth Walker. 183 yards this season, 5.7 yards per pop, 4 touchdowns, 4 runs for over 20. He's got 9 first downs. Zach Charbonnet has 9 first downs in the running game, 156 yards, 3.7 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns. So these two guys are no joke, especially Kenneth Walker. Charbonnet, he is more of a pass-catching receiver. In the backfield, screens, swing passes. That is Charbonnet's game, where Kenneth Walker is your regular running back, and he's very good at that. Now, in the receiving game, Metcalf, 2 touchdowns this season, 366 yards, 11 first downs. Tyler Lockett has 199 yards, 11.1 yards per catch, and he's got 14 first downs. He does not have a touchdown yet. He has 1 play over 20 yards. DK Metcalf has 6 over 20. And Jackson Smith-Njigba, the second leading receiver, 226 yards. He is the second-year man out of Ohio State. 25 catches, no touchdowns yet, 9 yards per catch, 1 big play over 20, and 12 first downs. So those 3 guys move the chains really well, because I'm looking at the Giants' first downs for receivers, and then I'm looking at the first downs for the Seahawks. I'm like, holy mother of Jesus, these guys are converting third downs. And I believe Jackson Smith-Njigba leads the NFL, or is pretty high up there in third down catches. So that's pretty good. Third down catches, that is, that convert to first down. So credit to him. And then obviously they'll feature Noah Fant in to get some reps and stuff like that. You know, they might pick on a safety or a linebacker. But I think the emphasis for the Seahawks offense is probably going to be towards Deontay Banks' side, whoever's there. Now, the offensive line, mentioned it earlier, Charles Cross, 1 penalty, 1 sack this season. Laken Tomlinson from the Jets and the 49ers, and the Lions before that, 2 penalties, 1 sack. Anthony Bradford at the right guard spot, 7 penalties and 2 sacks. Logan Forsythe, Christ, I am just off here. Stone Forsythe, 1 penalty, 2 sacks allowed. And as of Connor Williams, who tore his ACL and is back from that, 3 penalties and 1 sack allowed in 291 snaps. And also they are rotating in Christian Haynes, who has played better. He's played better over the last few weeks, especially against the Lions, who have a pretty solid front. He's a rookie out of UConn that we actually got a chance to interview at the Senior Bowl. I'll actually give more so that credit to Mr. Bryan. The defensive side of the football, they have some nice pieces. Their defense is doing really good things this season. Leonard Williams, 1.5 sacks, 10 quarterback pressures, 8 QB hits. He leads the team. He's tied with Derek Hall, 1 TFL and 6 tackles. We know that Leonard Williams can hit the quarterback. Let's see if he gets those sacks up. But he doesn't mean that he's not effective. Derek Hall, 13 tackles, 2 TFLs, 4 sacks, 12 quarterback pressures, 8 QB hits, and a forced fumble. This is a guy who was more of a lankier pass rusher, was more Known for his run defense at Auburn, he came out last year a second-round pick. He's playing well. Boye Mafe was a second-round pick the prior year out of Minnesota, I believe. 3 sacks, 11 QB pressures, 6 QB hits, a pass deflection, 4 TFLs, and 13 tackles for a loss. Maffe's having a really good year thus far. He has a sack in every game he's played this season except for one, which he didn't play. So he's played 3 games, 3 sacks. You move to the secondary, and that's where it gets a tad bit dicey. But Davon Witherspoon this season, going to take a look at his stats in just a second, along with Reek Woolen, Trey Brown, and Julian Love, an old friend of ours. David Witherspoon, no interceptions this year, 65% completion percentage allowed, 181 yards, 1 touchdown, 110.6 passer rating allowed with 1 pass deflection. You go to the safety position just for a second, and you go to Julian Love, who's played really well this year. 1 interception. He had 4 last year, 26 tackles, no pressures, 1 touchdown allowed, 84 passer rating, 84.6 completion percentage, but only 74 yards allowed. And you move back to the corner position to go to Trey Brown, who is the weakness on the defense a little bit, or specifically in the secondary. 6 tackles, 50% completion percentage allowed, 72.5. He is a shorter type. That's why I say he's a weakness. And then you move to the final guy, who was a complete steal out of the late rounds a couple of years ago, in Reek Woolen. 1.7 passer rating. Holy shoot. That is really, 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 really low. 3 completions allowed on 11 targets, 1 interception, 24 yards. That's really scary. That is really scary. I've never seen somebody, hopefully that statistic is right, 1.7 passer rating. I didn't even think that was possible. So there's your secondary stats. Now, let's move over into our final segments before we go over to the discussion with Mickey Alexander. Keys to win. Number 1, you got to find other targets and be efficient in the air and air it out. You can't be sitting here playing the conservative game. Oh, we're going to throw a 4-yard hitch or a 4-yard stick to Darius Slayton or Wan'Dale Robinson. The Giants have to start playing games like they have nothing to lose. Now, I don't think Brian Daboll and Joe Shane are on the hot seat, but these guys, man, these guys that they brought in, they are playing for something. Hyatt is playing for a reputation. Slayton's playing for a contract. Bellinger and Johnson, they're playing for their statuses. So I don't get it. Air it out. Take some shots. It's time to stop being fucking scared. Because if you keep playing scared, teams are going to keep pounding you in the coming weeks. And they won't want to play with your bend but don't break philosophy or your, we're just going to throw a 3-yard stick route and just predicate ourselves on yards after the catch. That's not going to happen. So find another targets this game, be efficient, and air it the fuck out. Number 2, get after Geno. Geno, I don't know how he is blitz-wise thrown against the blitz. I think last year he was pretty good at it, or he was really bad at it. I don't remember specifically, but it was one of the extremes. This is not a good offensive line. Charles Cross is the strong point. I want to see some stunts. I want to see some blitzes. You need to see what you have on these guys. We know who Dexter Lawrence is. That's fine. I would like some of the interior defensive linemen, not named Elijah Chapman, and also Chapman too, to get in there. I want to see Burns have a good game. So whoever you line up on the side of Stone Forsythe, I expect to have a good game. So maybe Burns plays to that side and you have Thibodeau against Cross. Part of the same draft class, by the way. But the Giants have to get home versus Geno. There is no doubt. You have to disrupt that operation back there. You have to disrupt the quarterback. You can't sit there and not do that. Or else you're going to be on the field for a while. Deonte Banks is going to be heavily targeted. And there you go. And then finally, for me, is get a turnover. The Giants had lots of turnovers in Cleveland. I don't think they had a turnover once in Washington. They had one turnover, which was a forced fumble by Andrew Phillips in the Vikings game, but barely took advantage of it. Get a turnover. It changes the complexion of the game. if you execute on offense the right way. The Giants will need every single fucking opportunity to execute, to put points in, to get the ball on offense. With Neighbors out, with Singletary out, even if they had those guys in, they need every single opportunity they can to execute. Their defense needs to be hungry. They need to get to the quarterback, and they need to get a turnover. Force Geno into an interception, forced fumble, whatever it may be, just get the football back and give it to your offense. But find other targets, be efficient, air it out. That's number one. Number two, get after Geno. And number three, get a turnover. Unfortunately, I don't have the Giants winning this game. I think having their two best weapons out is a detriment. I don't have much belief in Daniel Jones. The Seahawks are a good team. They're a little pissed off after losing and having their undefeated record tarnished. So they're looking for a good win coming into Thursday Night Football against the San Francisco 49ers. Seattle 26, Giants 13. Seattle 26, Giants 13. So with that said, I'm going to shift it over to the discussion I had with Mookie Alexander of Field Goals, the SB Nation site that covers the Seattle Seahawks. All right, so now we are in the second half of our show where we get the opponent's point of view, and this is Mookie's third time coming on the channel, I believe, because we had you back in 22, we had you on the draft show, and we had your colleague on last year, and now we have you back on for a third time. The Giants play in Seattle at Lumen Field this week. I'll start off by asking Mookie, what are some key takeaways for the first 4 weeks? 3-1. We'll talk about schemes and stuff in a little bit, but new head coach, new coaching staff. You guys are 3-1.
Yeah, great to be back, Alex. Third year in a row between the Giants and the Seahawks, and hopefully for Giants fans, the third time is the charm. But in terms of the Seahawks start to the season, there's a bit of good fortune in the opponents they've played because the Patriots offense just is non-functioning. The Broncos with Bo Nix, similarly bad offense, and then the Miami Dolphins without Tua Tagovailoa, non-functioning offense when you consider the backup quarterbacks that they've played. And Seattle ended up playing Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle that day, and Tim Boyle just got cut. So that gives you an idea of how easy a matchup that was for the defense. So the Seahawks defense did what it was supposed to do. I mean, they were superior in just about every way the first 3 games of the season, except for run defense in the Patriots game. But then just bad timing with a bunch of injuries on the defensive line. And the Detroit Lions, even without Frank Ragnow, their all-pro center, they still got one of the best lines in the NFL. And it was a total mismatch. And the Seahawks defense got shredded to the tune of 42 points allowed in just 50 plays. I mean, the Lions really just did whatever the heck they wanted after the first possession, in which they went 3 and out. So the defense, I think, could be an above average unit by the end of the season, but we're going to find out probably not this weekend, given who's missing for the Giants, but certainly with much tougher games to come against offensive juggernauts or theoretically teams with very good offenses. We'll see if this is significant improvement from the last couple of Pete Carroll defenses. But offensively, I think the star of the show has been Geno Smith and the wide receivers. Geno may only have 4 touchdown passes and 4 interceptions, but it's kind of misleading. He's had a couple of batted balls that were picked and a couple of would-be touchdowns that were tackled at the 1-yard line. So he leads the league in completion percentage, leads the league in attempts and passes completed, and not something you probably would have expected given all the emphasis about we want to be a running team. But given the struggles of the offensive line, the passing game has had some issues with pass protection, of course, but DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett, they are looking like that top-tier wide receiver trio we would hope that they would be under new offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. And right now, I'd say that the offense has been, the passing offense, that is, has been the biggest positive out of this season. And if this keeps up, then Geno could be in for a career year, and so could at least DK Metcalf, and of course, in his second year, Jackson Smith-Njigba. So we're really hyped about that, and there's still a lot of work to be done. But 3-1, you couldn't ask for much more, given this kind of looked like a treacherous. They could be 2-2 or 1-3, but nope. 3-1 in first place in the NFC West, gladly accept that.
Of course. And of course, the 49ers are on a little bit of a downturn, but we'll see how they do this week. What are some of the key differences between the schemes of Ryan Grubb, who's the new OC, Aiden Durd, who's the new DC, And Clint Hurd, who was the last DC, and Shane Waldron, who was the old OC, is now in Chicago coaching Caleb Williams. What are some key differences between the schemes? What are they doing differently?
Defensively, a lot more simulated pressures under Mike Macdonald. So Adam Dirty, the defensive coordinator, yes, that is his job title, but Mike Macdonald ultimately calls the plays. So simulated pressures, meaning we're showing one look and then showing something else. We're getting a non-traditional four-man rush where it looks like, are they going to bring 6, 7 guys? Nope, you're going to have 2 defensive tackles drop into coverage, but you're going to have a corner coming off the edge for a blitz. So that has been one of the things that we expected to see out of McDonald, because that's what he did a lot with the Baltimore Ravens. They're not playing as much cover 3 as they did with Pete Carroll and Clint Hurt, but it's still a little bit too early in the year to make anything definitive about the coverage types that they have. Just that the simulated pressures are definitely up. The pass rush also looks much better last week, notwithstanding. And that's been one of the pluses of McDonald's defense thus far. They're, I believe, still leading the league in pressure rate. They're up there in sacks. They probably should have had more, but they haven't necessarily finished all their sacks like they should have. But offensively with Ryan Grubb, maybe the biggest shock is the lack of play action. This is an offense that is functioning without play action. They're last. Geno Smith is last in play action rate right now at about 11.6%, I believe, just looking at NFL Pro. So this is mostly a shotgun-heavy drop-back team. We're not seeing a lot of pistol. I don't think we've seen any pistol. And even the play action passing is seemingly more shotgun than under center. They're not running under center plays very often, which is different from Shane Waldron, where we saw bit more under center personnel, still primarily a shotgun offense, but that under center personnel under center formations rather, involved 12 personnel. So 1 back, 2 tight ends. Not seeing as much of that with Ryan Grubb. We're seeing predominantly 11 personnel. So 1 running back, 1 tight end. They're mixing in some different looks as the season progresses, but one of the most pass heavy teams in the league. In fact, the most pass heavy. Geno leads the league in attempts. But yes, with Ryan Grubb, the big thing with him is that this is his first year in the NFL, period. We've seen some college coordinators go into the NFL, but they've had prior NFL experience. Grubb has no NFL experience prior to getting hired. So he has play calling experience, which is important given his successes at Fresno State and the University of Washington. So early days, but I'm liking what I'm seeing out of Grubb's offense. I would like to see them run the ball a little bit more. And the return of Kenneth Walker, I suspect, will lead to an increase in running the ball. The offensive line, of course, has to be better, but all things considered, given the offensive line injuries and some of the inconsistencies up front with run and pass blocking, I think Grubb has done about as well as he possibly can with some of the restrictions he's facing with his roster, meaning the offensive line, and just get your feet wet in the NFL and adjusting to hash marks being different, and the play calling feels got to be different in the pros compared to college.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. Some college coordinators, they have, some NFL experience or an assistant job or whatever. And based on what you're telling me, what I'm seeing, right? You could talk about, as other people, I should say, talk about, oh, well, they haven't played, many good teams or whatnot. And, you play who you play. Your record is who you are at the end of the day. And for a college coordinator, and you could look at stats, you could have a 3-1 team, for example, and they're like terrible on offense, but they're like terrific on defense. But the way I'm seeing it statistically with all this stuff adding up for Ryan Grubb is a really good accomplishment for him. And, if this progresses, I'm not saying it will or will not. I don't have any crystal ball, but maybe he's a guy that people look at next year as a head coaching candidate, because there's always those hot names that come out, the Ben Johnsons of the world. But I'm looking farther ahead, of course. Now, Geno Smith, when we played you guys in Seattle last time, which was 2022, he ended the season with 30 touchdowns. You came out in the beginning of the show, mentioned that Geno Smith is playing some of his best football right now. Do you think and I know this is 4 games in, do you think he is on track to play better football than 2022?
I absolutely believe he is. He might not necessarily have the touchdown to interception ratio that's as good as the 2022, but the process is much better. Just the constant pressure he's facing, he's been blitzed at a top 5 rate, or thereabouts. He's certainly in the top 10. I'm trying not to look just to double check, but last I recall, he was in the top 10 in blitz rate faced. His pressure rate's pretty high. So he's been under duress constantly, but he's making the right play more often than not. He's been so accurate with the ball. He's had to, I mean, if you saw the Lions game, just the number of plays he had to make on the run or just to stay within the pocket and deliver just a perfect throw, it's really incredible. Last season, I think he played better than the stats suggested, but there were moments where it was a bit of a struggle for Geno, particularly getting the ball out. But in this case, he's not taking some of the questionable sacks that he had taken in years past. And his sack rate is low for somebody who's throwing that many times behind an offensive line that is not highly regarded. The worry would be, is he getting sacked at an 8-9% rates or something like that? Nope, he's in what, a little bit below 6% or thereabouts. So that's perfectly fine. He's taken some hits, but he's also delivering the ball on time. He's making the right reads. He is just in control of the offense as much as he can be under Ryan Grubb. And this is without really unleashing a lot of the aggressive deep balls that we've seen under Geno, and of course with Russell Wilson for so many years, but under Geno too, has kind of continued. I mean, think about it. Tyler Lockett has not had a target, I think, beyond 15 yards down the field. Most of the deep shots have gone to DK Metcalf overwhelmingly, and maybe one or two to Jackson Smith and Jigba. But Geno is moving the ball through not explosive plays, not 20, 25-yard plays or 40-yard plays, just a bombardment of explosives. It's more of get 5 yards here, get 10 yards here, get maybe 15 yards here. And it's showing up on third downs, because when they are not in third and long, when they're within 1 to 9 yards of the first down marker, they're converting over 60% of the time. And that has been a major problem for the Seahawks for years, dating back to the Wilson era. And a lot of that is down to Geno Smith making some fantastic plays and executing the offense as intended. The problem for Seattle, of course, is through some of the sacks taken, some of the penalties that just absolutely drive me crazy. They're in third and long disproportionately way too much. And they're, I think, something like 1 of 17 trying to convert third and long. So if they can eliminate that, the third down offense is going to be in the top half of the league, I suspect, by the end of the year, which that has happened, I think, one time under Pete Carroll. And if it can happen one time under first-year head coach Mike Macdonald, I mean, that would be a major accomplishment.
Yeah, definitely. So you were just talking about him, and I was seeing the stat sheet because someone pointed it out on Twitter, but it was for fantasy purposes. It wasn't actually like real football purposes. Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? First round pick from last year. I think he had, now correct me if I'm wrong, over 100 yards in the Patriots game. I think that was a 26-23 victory or something like that. It was done by a field goal. Does his role in the offense right now fit him? And is he coming his way around to live up to first round expectations?
I think he's on his way there. I just want to clarify, Geno Smith's sack percentage is 6.4, which is still pretty good. But with JSN, he just had his first 100-yard game of his career, actually, against the Patriots. As you mentioned, 12 catches, was so critical in the win over New England, because that was a lot tougher than it needed to be. And even though he had 8 catches for 51 yards against the Lions, he was racking up first downs consistently. He leads the team in first downs on third down, and he is one of the best wide receivers already in just 2 seasons as a third down option. Now, we're not seeing him get a lot of those deep shots, those one-on-one opportunities where he can just go up and get the ball for a big play, but he's really good at sitting in zone coverage and finding that open space. He's got pretty reliable hands. He had some drops in his rookie year, but keep in mind that he had a minor fracture in his wrist right before the season started. So that kind of put him behind the playbook, behind the offense. So he had some rookie mistake moments. He even had a bad drop against New England, but that's his only drop I can think of this year. But with Smith and Jigba, especially with Tyler Lockett on the other side of 30, he's kind of assuming the role of Lockett gradually. Some of the things that Lockett's been so great at over the years, we're starting to see the same with Smith and Jigba, getting open off the line of scrimmage, his route running, his ability to just move the chains and be a security blanket in the way that Lockett's been a security blanket over the course of 2 quarterbacks. So, yes, Smith and Jigba is also really good on crossing routes, yards after catch. It's kind of funny because Lockett, especially ever since his leg break several years ago, he's been falling down pretty much to as a means of self-preservation, so not really fighting for extra yards unless it's absolutely necessary. And hey, it's worked because he's only missed a couple of games since the leg break. And that leg break was 8 years ago. And DK Metcalf, sometimes he's too strong for his own good. And when he breaks tackles, he will occasionally fumble the ball in the process, like he did in Detroit. But with Smith and Jigba, there's a smoothness to his running style that if he gets the ball in space, he's going to get some extra yards and help Seattle advance down the field, especially on third down. So the best is still yet to come for Smith and Jigba. His depth of target is not great at the moment, but I think over time we're going to see that happen more. And ultimately, if the pass protection improves just a smidge, if the pass protection can improve to something like mediocre instead of bottom tier, um, that will provide more opportunities to push the ball downfield. And that would mean pushing the ball down the field to Smith and Jigba more often, in addition to the other receivers.
Yeah, definitely. And you were talking about that offensive line earlier. I was trying to read up on a couple of things. I was looking at some metrics. The right side not doing so great. I know you guys don't have Abraham Lucas Stone Forsythe on the right side. And I was looking at an article, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that said that Bradford, the right guard, Anthony Bradford, and rookie Christian Haynes were doing a couple of rotations last game. Um, what's the status of the offensive line? How would you look at every single player? Is the right side weaker than the left? What's the story there?
The right side is going to be the weaker side because you're down to your third string right tackle, because Lucas is still on the PUP list and not coming back anytime soon, at least to my knowledge. And then his backup, George Fant. Fant was brought in on a 2-year deal, sort of like the ultimate Abe Lucas insurance, so he wouldn't have to go through starting a 41-year-old Jason Peters like what we saw last year. And then he hurts his knee week 1, and he's on injured reserve for another couple of weeks. So Forsythe, who's better at left tackle, ends up starting at right tackle. And to his credit, he's held his own. I think he's been quite competent in ways that I didn't expect, because he was not a lock to even make the roster. He was definitely in competition to keep his roster spot in preseason, but he's been given the call, the emergency situation. He's done a pretty good job. I mean, if you got a third string guard off the bench, you don't expect him to be Steph Curry in the NBA. You just want somebody who can run the offense, score a few points here and there, but you're not anticipating a big splash of 3-pointers and fancy assists on 35 minutes a night. So with Forsythe, it's just don't completely destroy the integrity of the offense by giving up pressures every other snap. And to my surprise, he's done quite well there. The right guard situation is kind of messy because Bradford has struggled blocking, gave up a couple of sacks already in pass pro, and it's the penalties that are a killer because he's already committed 6. And he was penalty free on Monday night for the first time this season, but he's committed all sorts of penalties: false start, holding, personal foul penalty that earned him a fine for shoving a Patriots player in the face while he was already down. So that's been a source of frustration for Seahawks fans. But Christian Haynes, the third-round rookie out of UConn, he didn't get any playing time against the Miami Dolphins, and we're wondering, man, I thought this was supposed to be a competition. Aren't we going to see him play more? And lo and behold, he gets 36 snaps against the Lions, and he only allows 1 pressure. Now, in week 2 against the Patriots, he played much less, and he gave up the pressure almost right away, and that pretty much eliminated a potential touchdown to Metcalf. But he's a rookie, and you're going to live with that. I anticipate through the rest of the season, we're going to see Bradford and Haynes continue to rotate at right guard. And if Haynes continues to impress, if he continues to look good as a run blocker and as a pass blocker, it's possible we see a midseason switch that's permanent and Haynes becomes a starter. Center Connor Williams, of course, tore his ACL last year when he was with the Dolphins, ended up signing late in August, but he's slowly but surely making his way back into game shape. He's had some iffy moments here and there, but all things considered, he's been steady at center in ways that we haven't seen very often for the Seahawks. Left tackle and left guard, well, Laken Tomlinson at left guard, similarly to Bradford, just some bad reps, whether in run blocking or especially pass protection, because Seattle ended up committing 2 safeties against the Broncos, and Bradford and Tomlinson were each responsible for 1. But Tomlinson, better run blocker than pass protector, and it's showing on the film. Charles Cross, by far the best offensive lineman on the Seahawks, and he has lived up to the preseason hype that he's making that third-year leap. He's been healthy. He's been playing very well. His pass protection has been excellent outside of a couple of reps in the Miami game. And as a run blocker, he moves really well in space, and that's been great news for Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. So Surprise, surprise, the Seahawks do not have a very good offensive line, but Charles Cross is providing some optimism on the left-hand side. So if you had to break it down, the interior is the weakness for the Seahawks at the moment, which really worries me when Dexter Lawrence is on the other side. But right tackle Stone Forsythe is showing that he's capable, and Charles Cross on the left side could be in for a Pro Bowl season at this rate.
Yeah, and I'd have to probably acknowledge that Charles Cross is the best tackle to come out of those three that were drafted in 22. Neal's a bust. I don't know what Aquanu's doing, but Charles Cross, who he was the best pass protecting tackle by far in that class. But I don't, as I said, I forget how. I think he was the best pass protecting tackle. Aquanu was the best run blocking tackle, but some graded Neal as the highest ceiling or the most ready. I don't remember, but none of that's ever going to equate, unfortunately. Moving to the other side of the football, I remember on our draft stream, we were talking profusely, at least I believe, about the lack of pass rush in Seattle. And you guys are now fifth in the NFL in sacks. I was looking at who leads in sacks and stuff like that. Leonard Williams leads you guys in quarterback hits, an old friend of ours. Boye Mafe is also in there. Derek Hall, who's more of a lankier pass rusher from Auburn. I think it was last year's second round pick that you guys have. Do you think this defense has done more than expected up front? And as you mentioned earlier, is it due to the simulated pressures?
Well, in part the simulated pressures and all the different looks that McDonald's provided, but also the players are also just getting better. So Derek Hall was anonymous in his rookie year for the most part. He had no sacks, kind of a liability in run defense, didn't have a lot of pressures, and was struggling to get snaps over a completely washed up Frank Clark. But Boye Mafe had a second year leap last year. He got 9 sacks. So Derek Hall is having that Boye Mafe type second year leap. And he leads the team in sacks with 4, including that ridiculous one-handed throwdown of Jared Goff on Monday. I mean, he's getting blocked by Taylor Decker, and he just reaches out and just slings Goff to the ground. I mean, that was a fantastic play. We're seeing some more power to Hall's game in addition to his speed. So he has been a revelation, and he could end up with double-digit sacks at this rate, which I didn't think was going to happen. But Mafe also, he's been excellent. Unfortunately, he missed last week with a knee contusion. It seems like he'll play on Sunday, but he's listed as questionable. It's no lock that he's going to play. But when you think about the Seahawks pass rush, Uchenna Nwosu has been considered the best pass rusher on the team, at least the best two-way outside linebacker in terms of what he can do as a pass rusher and what he can do against the run. He hasn't played this season because he had an MCL sprain in the preseason finale against the Browns. He got chop blocked, and he got hit on a standing leg in an awkward spot, so he ended up missing all this time. But he's off the injury report. He's going to play against the Giants this weekend. So we're going to see the full set of Seahawks pass rushers in all likelihood on Sunday for the first time all season. Well, not quite, because Byron Murphy, the rookie, is not going to play, but to still have Leonard Williams back from his injury and Nwosu making his debut, and then you get Hall and Mafe, that's a lot to deal with. So I think the improvement of the interior pressure has been big. So having a full season of Leonard Williams compared to getting him in midseason and then at the same time the defense just collapsed, that's been a big help. He has just been monstrous with interior pass rushing. And Byron Murphy's commanding double teams at a decent clip, and he's also showing some good pass rushing skills. We won't see him on Sunday, but nevertheless, it's kind of an inside-out approach. Seattle's been lacking in interior pass rush for a good while that I would consider to be above average. They have it now, and that's also creating more opportunities for the edge rushers to feast. So I know last year Daniel Jones got sacked a billion times, but that was a much worse offensive line than the Giants have right now. The Giants' offensive line, I won't call it, they're not Detroit, they're not Philadelphia, but they at least look reasonably competent compared to what we've seen the last couple of seasons. So it's still going to be an interesting test for this Seahawks pass rush to play a better offensive line for the Giants compared to, say, a sub NFL level pass offensive line that the Patriots put out a couple weeks back.
Yeah, I mean, as I would to offer a 2-second take on our offensive line, not very good run blocking when they're in zone. When they're in gap and they run duo and all these other different up the middle runs, they're good. Singletary is doubtful, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Obviously, it's probably going to be Tyrone Tracy and Eric Gray in the backfield, maybe Dante Miller as well. for you guys to watch. But I don't think the Giants are going to run it too much. But again, they're not great run blockers in general, but pass blockers, they've been by far probably the best we've seen since some of the Super Bowl teams. But sticking to the defensive side of the football, the Detroit game was a shootout in the offensive facet, as we've mentioned multiple times on this program just yet. Who on the defense, specifically in the secondary, unless it wasn't somebody in the secondary, but who in the secondary got tested the most or even picked on?
Well, I would say that the secondary was not generally culpable for Jared Goff having a perfect game. I'd say that the linebackers had a much harder time out there, particularly Tyrell Dodson, who was responsible for a coverage bust that led to Jamison Williams scoring a 70-yard touchdown. Probably not the greatest night for Devin Witherspoon in terms of tackling, and he gave up a couple of catches, but it wasn't a case of the corners getting beaten over and over again. A lot of it was behind the line of scrimmage or at least 5 yards in front of the line of scrimmage. So it was testing the linebackers, whether inside or outside. So that was quite disappointing, but a tiny bit understandable given how many people were missing in that game. Julian Love going out with an injury early in the third quarter, that certainly made things worse for the Seahawks because now you're down your best safety. And Kayvon Wallace and Kobe Bryant ended up having to play a little more than I'm sure Mike McDonald would have preferred for them to play. So this secondary in general, I still think is really good and just could be one of the best in the NFL. But with Trey Brown is probably if Trey Brown is your worst corner, you're doing pretty well. And even Brown, he got beaten a couple of times on some Jared Goff throws over the middle. I would say that for the Seahawks, not having to deal with Malik Neighbors is in some ways disappointing because I want to see what it looks like when they're going up against an emerging star in Neighbors. But without him, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt, that's a mismatch in theory in Seattle's favor because I mean Robinson doesn't have a catch that's longer than 33 yards in his career, so you can't push the ball downfield really with the receivers that the Giants have. We'll see what happens in the 49ers game when you got Ayuk and Debo and et cetera. And they've given the Seahawks problems many occasions over the years. But Devin Witherspoon still playing well, just not making as many splash plays as as we saw in his rookie season. And certainly the Giants game, he had his coming out party. Reek Willen has been fantastic in terms of not giving up catches. I believe he's only allowed 4 this year. And then you've also got Trey Brown, as I mentioned. He is probably, quote, the weak link among the corners, and some of it is also just physical. Being a 5'10" corner in today's NFL will have its disadvantages against taller receivers. But, I mean, Neighbors is out, and Wan'Dale Robinson's 5'8". So, I mean, that's not going to be an issue there. And then the safety spots, Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams gone. Julian Love, Rayshon Jenkins are the replacements. I mean, Julian's just getting a promotion more than anything. Rayshon was brought in as a free agent. But Julian has been really, really good, better than he was last year. And to have him back this weekend is certainly a big help for the Seattle secondary. The linebackers are the question mark on this team, I would think, with Dotson and pass coverage and Tyrus Knight as a rookie. He's going to have his rookie moments both against the run and against the pass. Jerome Baker will be back from his hamstring injury, but I can't make any definitive statements about him because he's played so sparingly through 1.5 games.
Right. So moving further into game prep, a X factor for the Seahawks on offense and an X factor for the Seahawks on defense.
X factor on offense. That's interesting because obviously I can't have any of the top 3 receivers be an X factor because they're all such an important part of the offense. But Kenneth Walker is an obvious answer as just a game-changing running back. And as we saw against the Lions, he might be a ninja in disguise because he was tackled by, I think it was Alex Anzalone or one of the Lions linebackers, and it looked for sure that he was down. And then he's able to just flip and somersault his way off of his back and gain extra yards. I mean, he's that difficult to bring down. But Zach Charbonnet in the passing game as the backup running back, he's been quite valuable there. And he's also valuable in pass protection. So if the Giants are going to blitz, Charbonnet is the better pass protector than Kenneth Walker is. So when Charbonnet has space to work with, he can be pretty lethal. Not the same way that Walker is, but He is very physical. He can run through contact. He can break tackles. I noticed the Giants, I believe, are 31st in the NFL in allowing yards after contact. So having Walker and Charbonnet as your two backs, that might be a big problem for the Giants potentially in Shane Bowen's defense. So I'm going to go with Charbonnet, even though Walker's the main back. It's just that Charbonnet has that change of pace option, and as a receiving back, he could be in line for another solid day. X factor on defense, that's pretty interesting because I just pretty much mentioned everybody. I mentioned the entire starting lineup, but I'm just thinking about who could make an impact. Jonathan Hankins has been a good run defender, so obviously he's going to be important as far as stopping Tyrone Tracy and Eric Gray. I mean, no Singletary is going to make the day much easier for Seattle, but I'm not sure there is a solid X factor on the defensive side of the ball, other than if Jerome Baker is healthy and he can go full throttle, then Baker is also a really good blitzing linebacker. And I think that if McDonald is going to send blitzers, then we're going to see the linebackers go after Daniel Jones. And I think Baker is the better blitzer of the two. So I'm excited to see Baker come back because the linebacker play definitely got exploited hard by Ben Johnson and the Lions on Monday.
And if you're a coach and you're game planning against a certain guy, or in your case, you're covering for the Seahawks and you got to say, okay, the Seahawks got to stop this guy. One X factor for the Giants on offense, one X factor for the Giants on defense.
X factor for the Giants on offense. Well, of course, Neighbors is out, so that's kind of narrows my options significantly. I like Tyrone Tracy coming out of college, but so far he has been ineffective as a runner. I mean, his stats are incredible. I mean, to have 12 or 13 carries and one first down, I mean, there's just no productivity there. But nevertheless, he could be a threat out of the backfield as a receiver because he was a receiver in college. The tight end situation, I would like to see, especially getting ripped by Sam Laporta on Monday, to see what happens when they deal with Theo Johnson, the rookie. Daniel Bellinger is also another option, but Theo Johnson was somebody I think Seahawks fans had an eye on because he had a visit pre-draft. But obviously they ended up not taking him. But with the lack of viable receiving options, I think that Daniel Jones is going to try and throw it to Jones and Bellinger more often. So that's going to be a test for the Seahawks linebackers and see if they can fare better than they did last week dealing with Laporta. And then on defense, Micah McFadden, I really like him as a linebacker, and he can be quite disruptive. As a downhill player, he's a really good athlete. So we know that for the defensive line of the Giants, Thibodeau, Burns, Lawrence, that's going to be tough sledding for the Seahawks. And I think that's the Giants' best chance to win is if their defensive line can just totally outwork Seattle's offensive line. And they're capable. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is one of the best in the business. Thibodeau, I don't think has quite lived up to his potential, but on a good day, I mean, he can be lethal, and he's such an athletic marvel. And then Burns, it's kind of like an incomplete grade, I think, for him over the first few weeks of the season. But yeah, I'm high on McFadden and what he can do for the Giants defense. They've been competitive. I mean, this Giants defense has been at least acceptable. They kept the Giants in the game in the Cowboys loss, and they dominated Cleveland. So I am not taking this game for granted whatsoever because of what the Giants can do defensively with their front seven. The secondary is a different story. I feel like Seattle's got a pretty clear edge there, but the front seven for the Giants is what I'm going to be looking out for, and McFadden is at the top of the list as an X factor.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll be able to, through new age technology of editing, I'll be able to fix your ad because I didn't edit it from the last guest I had on. But nonetheless, where can people find you and your work?
Yeah, DH44. You cannot find me there. That's the wrong address. But you can find me on X at Mookie Alexander and also at Field Goals. And then all my work is either at fieldgoals.com or on sbnation.com.
I appreciate Mookie taking the chance to come on and talk some Giants Seahawks and giving us the Seahawks perspective as usual. So give him a follow at Mookie Alexander. And of course, the Field Goals work that he does. As for this channel, podcast, whatever, like, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when the live stream pops or a video drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. We'll have content through the week, of course, a recap episode and all that sort of good stuff. Appreciate you guys, and we will see you later.